5:07 a.m., December 12, 2025, off the coast of Libya. That 500-foot column of black smoke rising from the Mediterranean used to be the Kendall, a Russian Shadow Fleet vessel worth $50 million, packed to the brim with thousands of Iranian drone parts. Moscow thought this 100,000-ton fortress was untouchable, 1,250 miles from the front lines. They bet their entire winter offensive on this shipment being safe. They were dead wrong. In a split second, Ukraine didn't just sink a ship, they rewrote naval history forever. Here is how they pulled off the impossible. The setup, 6 hours earlier. To understand this absolute disaster for the Kremlin, we have to rewind the clock about 6 hours. We are in the international waters off Libya, a place I like to call the Wild West of the shipping world. Floating there is the Kendall. To the untrained eye, she's just a rusty, Oman-flagged commercial vessel, 820 feet of steel bobbing in the swells. But that flag is a lie. This is a classic Shadow Fleet tanker, a ghost ship operating off the books. And she isn't carrying bananas. Satellite scans suggest that below her decks, tucked inside innocent-looking shipping containers, sits the Kremlin's lifeline, thousands of components for Shahed attack drones transferred ship to ship under the cover of darkness. This single cargo haul is worth over $50 million, enough to keep Russia's campaign running for months. The Russian crew on deck were relaxing, probably smoking cigarettes and dreaming of a fat bonus check. And why wouldn't they? They were over 1,000 miles away from the nearest Ukrainian naval base. In their minds, they were safer than a politician in a bunker. They thought the war was a world away, but they were wrong. The war was exactly 50 miles off their starboard bow. Drifting quietly in the waves was what looked like a harmless commercial trawler, the kind you'd see fishing for tuna. This is Ukraine's secret weapon, the mothership. Inside a climate-controlled, windowless compartment on this trawler, a squad of elite SBU operatives sat in silence, strapped into high-end VR headsets. They weren't fighting the cold or the sea spray. They were holding game controllers, looking like they were about to start a round of Call of Duty. But the game they were playing had 0 respawns. Their avatars were waiting in the belly of the ship, a wolf pack of 5 Magura V5 sea drones, and hanging on the launch rails above them, 6 heavy-lift aerial Baba Yaga bomber drones stood ready to deliver the knockout punch. The trap was set. The mothership's hatch hissed open, and the pilots flexed their fingers. It was time to play. The flight commander gave the nod, kicked the door down. The bait, the loudmouths. At the stern waterline, hydraulic hatches hissed open. 2 Magura V5 drones slid into the dark Mediterranean swells. These aren't the stealthy ones, these are the loudmouths. Ukrainian engineers have tweaked their exhaust manifolds and bolted on radar reflectors. They want these things to look and sound like battleships on the Russian scopes. The electric starter motors whine, and then the engines roar to life. These 18-foot Greyhounds punch the throttle, accelerating to 45 knots in seconds, carving white scars into the black water. They aren't hiding, they are charging straight down the Kendall's throat. On the bridge of the Russian ship, the calm night instantly shatters. The commercial navigation radar, usually blind to low-profile drones, suddenly lights up like a Christmas tree. The alarms scream. Contact starboard bow, 2 high-speed targets, 2 miles and closing. The Russian captain spills his coffee in panic. He screams for the defense teams. This Shadow Fleet vessel has been retrofitted with twin 14.5mm KPVT heavy machine guns on the deck. Nasty Soviet hardware designed to turn light vehicles into Swiss cheese. The Maguras cross the 1-mile mark. Through the VR headsets, the Ukrainian pilots push the sticks forward, initiating an S-turn evasion pattern. They are taunting the bear. On the Kendall, the gunners open up. The heavy machine guns spit tongues of fire, sending tracers streaking through the dark. It's like a laser show at a cheap nightclub, but every beam of light is an armor-piercing slug the size of your thumb, moving at 3,200 feet per second.
The water around the lead Magura erupts in geysers. The pilot yanks the controller left, then hard right. The drone banks 45 degrees, skipping over a wave, dodging the stream of lead by inches. It's a high-stakes game of chicken, but the Russians are using barrage fire. They aren't aiming at the drone. They are filling the air with a wall of steel. At 800 yards, physics catches up. A 14.5mm round slams into the lead Magura's bow. The kinetic energy transfers instantly, shattering the fiberglass hull. A massive fireball illuminates the ocean, turning night into day for a split second. The second Magura tries to dive under the smokescreen of its fallen brother. Smart move, but the Russian gunners are dialing in now. They walk their fire across the water. 3 rounds tear through the engine block. The second drone cartwheels, disintegrates, and explodes in a spectacular shower of burning gasoline and plastic. Silence returns to the Mediterranean. On the deck of the Kendall, the Russian sailors are cheering. They are high-fiving. The captain wipes sweat from his forehead, looking at the burning oil slicks on the water. They think they just won the Battle of the Atlantic. They think the threat is neutralized. "Good shooting, boys," the captain probably radios to Moscow. "Attack repelled."
But inside the mothership, 50 miles away, the Ukrainian pilots aren't mourning. They are grinning, because they just got exactly what they paid for. They know 3 things the Russians don't. The Russians just heated up their gun barrels to the point of warping. Every eye on that ship is now fixated on the burning water, ruining their night vision. The real attack hasn't even started yet. It's been exactly 45 seconds since the Maguras exploded, the perfect window. "Launch the Babas," the commander orders. 6 massive rotors spin up. The first wave of 3 Baba Yaga heavy bomber drones lifts off into the night sky. These aren't your kids' toy drones. These are hexacopters the size of a kitchen table, capable of lifting payloads that would make a mule buckle. Tonight, they are carrying unguided PG-7 VL anti-tank grenades. They climb to 1,000 feet, their electric motors humming a low, menacing buzz. But here is the trick. The mothership launches them on a high ballistic arc. They aren't trying to be stealthy, they want to be seen, eventually. Back on the Kendall, the euphoria is fading into a nervous buzz. The smoke from the burning Maguras is drifting across the deck, stinging eyes and obscuring the horizon. Suddenly, a lookout on the bridge wing screams, "Air contact, high-angle zenith!" He points a shaking finger at the sky. Above them, thermal signatures are descending fast. The Baba Yagas have cut their motors and are in a terminal dive, trading altitude for speed, plummeting like stones toward the ship's deck. Chaos erupts. The Russian gunners, who just spent 5 minutes shooting down at the water, now have to crank their heavy KPVT mounts violently upward. The gears grind. The barrels are still smoking hot, creating heat shimmers that distort their optical sights. A Russian Marine on the upper deck scrambles, throwing an Igla man-pads onto his shoulder. He aims at the falling shadows, waiting for the tone. Nothing. The drones are dropping too fast, their electric motors too cold for the infrared seeker to lock onto. "No lock! No lock!" he screams, tossing the $20,000 missile aside and grabbing his AK-74. The bridge officer slams his fist on the electronic warfare console. "Jam them! Full power!" The Volts system blasts radio noise on all frequencies, trying to sever the link between the drones and their Starlink relay. It works partially. The first drone loses stability in the electronic storm. It wobbles, catches a rotor on a cable stay, and spins wildly into the sea, 200 yards off the port beam. The second drone fights through the interference. It drops its payload blind. The grenade whistles down, missing the bridge but slamming into a shipping container on the foredeck. It's not a ship-killing blow, but it blows the doors off the container. Metal shrapnel pings off the superstructure, forcing every Russian head to duck. The third Baba Yaga is the sacrificial lamb. It dives straight for the radar mast. The KPVT gunners finally find their mark. A 14.5mm round shears through its battery pack. The drone explodes in midair, raining burning lithium cells onto the deck. The captain is now convinced he is a naval genius.
He has defeated a sea attack. He has defeated an air attack. He believes his electronic shield is impenetrable, but he's missing the bigger picture. The fiber optic nightmare. While every Russian eye was glued to the clouds and every jammer was pointed at the sky, three dark shapes were slipping through the waves, silent, low, and closing fast. Unlike the aerial drones, these machines don't care about radio jamming. Inside the mothership, the flight commander isn't celebrating. He's watching three green dots on his screen cross the red line 2 miles from the target. Execute split. Release the swarm. Out in the dark water, the final 3 Magura V5 drones are rushing in. But this time, they don't charge in a straight line. Suddenly, the 2 flanking Maguras break formation. They peel off hard left and right, carving wide arcs away from the ship. The central Magura keeps charging straight up the middle, screaming for attention. On the Kendall, the radar operator is confused. Target splitting, what are they doing? Before he can answer, the flanking Maguras slow down. Their top hatches pop open like the bay doors of a B-52 bomber. From inside the belly of each sea drone, 4 small, angry shadows rise up. 8 quadcopter FPV drones lift off from their floating launch pads. These aren't normal drones. Trailing behind each one is a hair-thin strand of fiber optic cable unspooling from a reel inside the Magura. This is the game changer. The Russian EW officer sees the new contacts on his scope. He sneers, more toys, burn them. He cranks the jammer to maximum output. Broadband noise meant to fry their receivers blasts out, invisible waves of electromagnetic energy powerful enough to knock a commercial airliner off course. The Russian crew waits for the drones to drop out of the sky like dead flies. But the drones just keep coming. Through the VR headsets on the mothership, the video feed is crystal clear. 1080p resolution, 0 lag, no static. The pilots can see individual rivets on the ship's hull. Jamming ineffective, the EW officer screams, panic cracking his voice. They aren't stopping. Why aren't they stopping? Because you can't jam a glass cable with radio waves, comrade. It's like trying to stop a train by yelling at it. The swarm of 8 FPVs accelerates to 90 mph. They split into pairs. The central Magura is drawing the heavy machine gun fire, absorbing rounds, sacrificing itself to clear the path. Meanwhile, the silent second wave of 3 Baba Yaga bombers is already overhead, unnoticed in the chaos, entering their final dive. The Russian captain looks out his window. He sees death coming from the water. He sees death coming from the air. And for the first time, he realizes his $50 million ship is defenseless against a spool of fishing line. The trap hasn't just snapped, it is locked shut. Sensory overload. The next 60 seconds on the Kendall aren't a battle. They are sensory overload. It starts with the swarm. The 2 flanking Maguras pop their hatches and 8 fiber optic FPV drones scream into the air. But the Russians aren't giving up. The captain screams over the PA system, ordering every able-bodied man to the rails. Cooks, engineers, officers, everyone grabs an AK-74 or a flare gun. The deck of the Kendall erupts in small arms fire. It's a wall of lead. The first pair of FPVs tries to rush the bridge. A Russian Marine on the wing deck doesn't panic. He leads the target perfectly with his PKM machine gun. Tracers tear through the first drone, shredding its plastic frame. It spins out and smashes harmlessly into a crane. The second drone jinks hard, but flies straight into a cloud of signal flares fired by the crew. The blinding magnesium light washes out the pilot's camera. He loses orientation and slams into the superstructure. Russia 2. Ukraine, 0. Meanwhile, the 2 flanking Maguras, now empty of their drone cargo, don't just float away. They accelerate, turning into suicidal decoys. They charge the ship's bow and stern, engines whining. The heavy KPVT gunners, seeing these massive targets, swing their barrels instinctively. 14.5mm rounds tear into the empty Maguras. One explodes in a fireball of gasoline. The other disintegrates into fiberglass splinters. The gunners cheer, thinking they've stopped the main threat, but they took the bait. By focusing on the empty carriers and the buzzing FPVs, they left the waterline wide open. The remaining FPVs dive aggressively, not to kill the ship, but to blind it. They suicide dive into the radar arrays and the spotlight clusters. Glass shatters. The deck goes dark. The heavy KPVT gunners are now firing blind into the night, their muzzle flashes illuminating their terrified faces. This is the moment the three Baba Yaga bombers make their move, diving from the darkness above. The first one tries to strafe the bridge with a grenade drop, but a gunner firing wildly into the air gets lucky. A heavy slug shears off a rotor arm. The massive drone spins violently out of control and crashes into the sea, vanishing in a splash of white foam. The second Baba Yaga attempts to target the communications mast, but the sheer volume of AK fire from the desperate crew is too much. Bullets riddle its battery pack. It bursts into flames mid-air, falling like a burning meteor onto the foredeck, where crewmen scramble to kick the wreckage overboard. The coup de grace. While the crew is distracted by the burning debris falling from the sky, the central Magura V5, the heavy hitter loaded with 1,000 pounds of high explosives, punches the throttle. It covers the last 400 yards in seconds. A sharp-eyed Russian sailor spots the wake. He screams a warning, aiming his rifle, but a 5.45mm bullet against a hardened sea drone is like throwing a pebble at a tank. The Magura impacts the Kendall amidships, right at the waterline. The explosion is tectonic. It punches a hole the size of a garage door through the double hull. Seawater rushes into the hold instantly, lifting the massive ship 10 degrees to port. The shockwave knocks every sailor on deck off their feet. The AK fire stops. But the coup de grace comes from the third and final Baba Yaga. Hovering silently in the blind spot created by the smoke, the pilot sees the exposed cargo hold where the explosion blew the hatch covers off. He pushes the throttle to maximum. He isn't dropping a bomb. He is the bomb. The massive hexacopter, laden with thermite charges, enters a terminal dive straight into the ship's belly. On the bridge, the captain claws his way back to the window just in time to see the shadow plummeting into his ship. The Baba Yaga smashes into a crate marked agricultural parts. The impact triggers the thermite, burning at 4,000 degrees. It melts through the steel and touches the lithium batteries of the smuggled Shahed drones. The white glow turns into a miniature sun. The first container cooks off, triggering a chain reaction that tears the Kendall apart from the inside out. The pilots on the mothership watch in silence as the Mediterranean night turns into day. They didn't just sink a ship, they erased it.